Our first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil rock.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think is an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
Woo! Katie Lee rules, bro.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Riff Worship, a podcast that of love letter to guitar-based music. Maybe a support group for people personally affected by Tony Iommi's guitar playing. You might notice that we are down a host. Austin Paulson had some family issues come up that he has to attend to. So today it's just Dylan and I.
Oh, God.
The two cavemen of the group.
Oh, yeah.
We did not go to school for journalism, so we cannot be held to Austin Paulson standards.
Which is fitting for what we're talking about today. I truthfully think this.
Yeah. You don't have to go to college to talk about High on Fire.
And you know what? You don't really have to be extremely educated to enjoy High on Fire. And that is not a slight against the band's music or anything. This is if you like Black Sabbath, if you like, anything along that vibe that has just soaked in resin and just like covered in bong water, like you're gonna fucking love this. And this is a band all of us have talked about on numerous occasions and watched videos and seen interviews, and you and Austin have had a chance to see, but I haven't. I think we've all mutually agreed that we enjoy this band a little bit better than Sleep.
Yeah.
This band's a little bit more visceral, a little bit more direct. That's not to say I don't enjoy Sleep, or you don't enjoy Sleep, or Paulson doesn't enjoy Sleep, but this is definitely the band for me. And I think you and I got into this band around the same time, even though we were living in completely different states and had no idea who each other were at this point.
I may have gotten into High on Fire from like lurking the Lamb Goat message boards or something. Seeing people talk about it may have actually been the video for this album, Rumors of War. And I was like, oh, I've never heard of this shit, so I'm going to click on it and check it out.
I can remember when I bought the first High on Fire record that I ever owned. And I remember when I actually heard the band the first time. The track Devolution was on, I'm pretty sure I saw it on Headbangers Ball really late at night, like 1 a.m. or something. And I think Devolution was on one of the Headbangers Ball compilations that I had at the time. I could be wrong, but I also remember my buddy and I like hanging out on like a Wednesday night or something, going to like the next town over where they had a kind of an entertainment store you could rent movies at, books, CDs, that sort of stuff. And I was like, fuck it, I'm going to get this High on Fire record. And it was Blessed Black Wings. I remember being in my buddy's like 1990s Camaro, blasting this record at top volume in this thing, which is so fitting. It was red as well, the car, blasting it at full volume. It had rained. We're on our way back. And I just hear him just slightly mutter, oh shit. And nothing happened. I thought maybe he had like whatever it could have been. We get back to my place. He's like, yeah, we almost died. He's like, I hydroplaned for a good like 100 feet.
Oh no.
It's like, oh, this is, my God, what a way to go out.
So forever, for the rest of your life, you'll associate High on Fire with that near-death experience, I'm sure.
With that near-death experience, as well as I think we both basically described the band as Motorhead on like meth. And I remember I mentioned that to Austin not terribly long after I met him, and he has stuck that, and he's brought that up on many occasions. It's like, it's funny to say that because arguably You know, Lemmy was doing a lot of speed and a lot of like meth, I'm sure. But this, for some reason, that's a little bit more fitting for this band, it seems, even though I don't believe that was maybe that was one of the drugs of choice. Could have been. Doesn't really matter. But yeah, my experience with this band is wild. And then when the record we're talking about today, which I have right here, which is Death is This Communion. I remember when it came out, I did the same thing. Like a buddy and I went to that music store and I picked it up, and I don't know if there was a CD player involved at this point, but I went home, put it in, and like, oof, just dove straight in. And again, what I've learned with this band is every record's a High on Fire record. There's never really one that's unenjoyable.
I was speaking about the Motorhead comparison. I kind of always thought that Pike was like doing a Lemmy voice. Like he just was trying to make his voice sound like Lemmy. I was very surprised in our reading to find out that like that's just his normal singing voice. Yeah. That's his natural singing voice.
Just a sailor.
So no, I think in a way, no matter what this band sounded like, they would draw Motorhead comparisons just because of Pike's voice. Mm-hmm. But some of the songs are also very in the same vein as Motorhead. Oh,
I mean, throw in the fact that they're a 3-piece, right?
Right.
I mean, one of the loudest 3-pieces out there. The lineup of the band at the time was Des Kensel, Jeff Matz, and arguably one of the most legendary kind of characters and figures in, you could just lump it in as all of extreme metal, as Matt Pike. I've never experienced seeing this band live. I don't know how loud they were. I know I saw Sleep, and the volume was laughable. Like, absolutely. I saw them, I saw Sleep in 2018 at some theater in Louisville. The Brown Theater or something like that. Like, when I mean theater, I mean wood stage, like curtains, everything. And I'll have to see if I can find a photo of it, but I was probably 3 rows from the stage. And I remember we were seated, and I saw the wall of like orange amps there. And I just laughed. I went, I have no earplugs. There's this wall of amps, and it's like, what have I done? What have I done to myself? And the vibrations off that. Now, coming from like the Sleep world, where it's all this kind of wall of sound that's this kind of drone, you get High on Fire, which is extremely visceral and quick and multifaceted and, venomous to an extent with some of the solos. Blistering could be the word that would be used. These 3 guys really lock in hard on this record. There's a lot of work put into this record. But you and I had a bit of a discussion off air about this record a little bit. We kind of talked about how the track Rumors of War is kind of a center point on this album. Arguably the band's hit, arguably the most known track from the band, especially for a newcomer fan. But I think you brought it up first. The album doesn't really get up and take off. It's kind of like the same tempo loosely all the way through, or it feels that way, except for Rumors of War. It's like kind of the outlier on the record. There are great songs on this record. It's a great record, but that's kind of the big standout, and that's probably why it was a single. I've gone back throughout the years and listened to the band's whole catalog, and even preparing for this episode, I listened to the album prior, Blessed Black Wings, and then the album after, Snakes for Divine, and those are really fast records. And this one's just a little bit more mid-tempo, almost like this one feels more like a fight and less just like, getting shoved down a hill at full speed.
I think when we were having that conversation, I maybe was having a hard time fully expressing my thoughts, but I think really kind of every song feels like it has to start from zero from the way this album is produced, because a lot of there are two songs at the beginning, the front half of the album, that will start with lute or acoustic 12-string guitar and then kick into the song, and then Rumors, there's two instrumentals. One of them is just a drum track before Rumors of War.
Headhunter.
Yeah. And then there are two songs there at the end of the album that have little jams at the end of the song that are a minute and a half or something. So with all those things kind of put together, the intros, a drum intro, and then a couple songs at the end have outros. All the songs kind of feel like they have to start from almost nothing and build up to a furious pace, which kind of all the songs
like a fury whip.
Yeah, they do get up to speed, but they do have to build up to speed to get there.
I can definitely see that. And I don't know, with the research I've done, I don't know if that was a conscious effort on this record to maybe be a little bit more, the word epic gets used a lot, but a little bit more epic in proportion. Because the band is no stranger to writing long tracks or kind of, epic tracks, for lack of a better word. I mean, just to give a little bit of background for the band formed in 1998 in Oakland, California. With, I believe, I can't remember the original bass player's name, but it was Matt Pike, Des Kensel on drums, George Rice, I was going to say Reese, on bass. Obviously the band formed out of Matt's other band, prior band, Sleep, breaking up at this point. There's a lot of stories about the breakup of that band and involving a lot of money and recording budgets being spent on what it was, but that's a story for another time. But this band has put out 3 records and a demo prior to the release of Death is His Communion, with the self-titled demo, the first record, which is The Art of Self-Defense, the second record, which is Surrounded by Thieves, and then the album prior to this one, Blessed Black Wings. They were road dogs. They were kind of, they were the grizzled guys on any tour that they would find themselves on. I believe that they signed to a smaller kind of independent label that primarily releases stoner and sludge and kind of psych rock records called Man's Ruin Records. And then they signed to Relapse Records, which is why we know of them. It's even, it's out there, but I believe while touring for that first record, they played a show in Atlanta, Georgia in the year 2000, January 2000, and all 4 members of Mastodon met at that show, and that's kind of where the band formed. So you owe a little credit to High on Fire and Matt Pike for the formation of Mastodon. But this is a band that knows what they're doing by this point. They know who they want to record with. Blessed Black Wings was recorded with Steve Albini, who we are no strangers to. But then they go with kind of another grunge legend with this one. Not to be confused with the 60s and 50s rock and roll group Jan and Dean, but this is Jack Endino. Not to be confused with Jack Endino.
Yeah, thank you for that quote, Matt.
What was funny is Austin legitimately made that same statement a couple weeks back when we were talking about this. And he's like, wait a minute. Are you talking about two people, bud? Nah, man.
Yeah, Jack Endino, he produced Screaming Life by Soundgarden. He produced Bleach by Nirvana. And
God's balls.
God's
balls.
And Infrared Riding Hood by Tad and Smell the Magic by L7.
It's a cool record.
A couple of Mudhoney albums too, I'm pretty sure.
A lot of grunge records that he did. I think he did a 3 Inches of Blood record. I could be wrong. That was a lot later, clearly. I don't know if High on Fire has any prior connection to Jack, other than they probably just like some of the records he did, and he's probably done some of their buddies' records at that. But this part of this record was recorded in 2 separate studios in the Seattle area, correct? Avast Studios was one of them. And I can't remember the other studio. Maybe you can help me with that one, Swindle?
The drums were recorded in a Avast studio. The guitar, bass, and vocals were recorded at Soundhouse Studio.
The records that I enjoy that Jack has done are essentially the records that you mentioned. I don't think I know much of his later output other than this record. I know he's done a lot of different videos here and there on like how he got, certain sounds for certain records and all of that. But I don't, on paper, it looks like that Jack being a producer for this record would be a great fit. And it makes sense. Like, I'm not going, oh, why did they pick this guy? But if you look at the kind of the lineage of it and his resume, it is kind of a weird, choice. But maybe they're like, you know what? We did Steve, the last record. We've worked with Billy Anderson for a while. Let's try Jack and see if we can get a sound with him, see what type of sound we can get. And it's a pretty thick sounding record.
I think they really needed a producer, probably, from our experience, not our experience with Steve Albini, but like our experience hearing Steve talk about making albums. He considers himself really just an engineer.
Yeah.
Like whatever the bands come to the studio with, he just records what they do.
Right.
But I feel like High on Fire wanted someone and maybe needed somebody to like kind of guide them in a direction, which also like even they still appreciate that because they've been recording with Kurt Ballou for a long time at this point. And I think Kurt produced the album that's about to come out as
he sure did
as we're recording.
Mm-hmm. He sure did. Yeah. And you know what? You're probably right. I didn't even put that into consideration that, yes, we've talked a little bit about kind of Steve's productions and how he considers himself more of an engineer. He's kind of hey, you come in, you guys know how you sound. I'm just going to move the mics in the right spot. And Billy Anderson, who we've kind of talked about a little bit, maybe even Austin and I, maybe more so with some of the cattle decapitation records. But Billy is known for these very organic kind of sounding records. He's also a friend of the band. There's no way he's not. They're all kind of based out of the same area. So yeah, that may very much be it. What I noticed around this time period as well with Relapse Records is from like 04 to 07, Relapse had a lot of bands that were doing really, really well. You had Mastodon, obviously, with Leviathan in 04. They signed to a major label not terribly long after. You have the Dillinger Escape Plan coming off their Miss Machine record. Ironworks comes out in 2007. Those are just to name a couple. But you could definitely tell Relapse put kind of the machine behind High on Fire for this record because there was a lot of promotion for this record that I remember. I saw a lot of magazine layouts in like Revolver and Decibel at this point in time. Guitar World. I don't know how many of those kind of making of videos there are. I think there's 5 for this. Also, Rumors of War got a lot of play on all the video formats. So there was a lot, the machine was put behind it. The independent record machine was put behind it. Also with this record, you solidify the lineup. Finally, High on Fire prior to this record was kind of in limbo with their bass player situation, right?
Spinal Tap.
Yeah, essentially. George left the band, or was let go, however that happened. And then they brought in Joe Preston, who was in the Melvins for a little while. He played with Earth. He's in a solo act called Thrones. I believe he was in Harvey Milk for a little while. A lot of credentials in sludge and doom and just really like riff heavy, like dirgy music. But I didn't realize he was just kind of brought in. It's like, hey, we just need a bass player for a little while. You don't have to do this in the long run. Just come in, help us with some tours, and help us out with all this. And I think the first live footage of High on Fire I saw was there was a festival tour called Sounds of the Underground for a few years, and High on Fire was on the very first one, and there was a DVD released for it, and it was, I believe the band played, I think they played Hung, Drawn, and Quartered, which is off of Surrounded by Thieves. And I just, that band amongst all of like those kind of modern metalcore bands that were around at that time, and like Guar, they were, again, an outlier on that tour. And Matt Pike has a great line in there. Mark Morton from Lamb of God goes, "What do you want fans to walk away from a High on Fire show?" And he goes, "Shattered dreams, broken bones, and broken hearts," or something like that. And it's like, all right, let's see where we're going. But anyway, Joe Preston was playing that, and I remember him playing this really gnarly BC Rich Mockingbird bass and just like laying it in thick. You couldn't hear him because he was so distorted. But in 2007, the guys hook up with Jeff Matz from formerly of the band Zeke, and Zeke was on a bit of a hiatus or were broken up. And Jeff was looking for a kind of an outlet for creativity. He was feeling stifled, feeling like he had no outlet, and he hooked up with the guys and through mutual friends, and he's in the band.
I think it was actually 2006 because...
Oh, he joined a year early.
So High on Fire was supposed to go on a spring tour with Goat Whore a spring tour in 2006 with Goat Whore. And I think that's when Joe Preston was like, okay, it seems like an interview with Dez makes it seem like Joe joined the band just a couple of weeks before Blessed Black Wings was recorded. So he joined the band to record the album, and then High on Fire was like, hey, we're about to go on this tour, actually. Do you want to go on tour? And that happened like 2 or 3 times, but then when they went to go on that tour with Goat Whore, and he was like, actually, I think I've had my fill. So in spring 2006, I think Jeff joined the band. And actually, Dez at some point goes through back surgery, and Jeff and Matt write the album, Death is His Communion.
So I'm glad you brought up Dez and his back surgery, because I don't believe this was the last back surgery he had. I think he had one maybe even after this record. I could be getting time frames wrong. I think he had to have another one. And if I remember right, he did an interview through some years later where he said he basically had to teach himself how to play drums again, because I believe he had to elevate his stool a little bit more because he was sitting so low, he was taking the brunt on the back. And if you hear these records, you know why. He, in that video I referenced earlier from the Sounds of the Underground, that was the first time I ever heard low tune drums, and he was smacking them so hard, and he used big kick drums. I think like a 24-inch kick drum, maybe.
His fucking rack tom is the size of some people's kick drum. The videos, the relapse videos of their in studio shit, his rack tom is insane.
He hits so hard. And I'm sure that attributes a lot to the back surgeries he had to have. But there's clearly a lot of kind of changes going on, some tumultuous, member swaps going on during this period of time. But they have Jeff, who ends up kind of being a Swiss Army knife of musician. You know, he's not just a really good bass player, but he's also familiar with a lot of like Middle Eastern, Turkish instruments, a lot of medieval instruments, even with, I can't remember the name of the track. I believe it's an instrumental, but it's got lute on it.
Yep.
A Ludi and the Blowfish.
Yeah, and he wrote the title track for this album, right? Jeff
He wrote
did?
Death is Communion. Yep. The story behind that is he kind of, I believe he brought that bass riff into it, and they wrote that together when he and Matt were roommates at a house in Oakland that, from what I grasped, was at one point lived in by the punk band Annihilation Time, which is known for like their hard partying and just like debauchery, to a point that Matt Pike moved out of the house. He was like, I was an alcoholic, but my God, like I had to get out of there. But they wrote the title track together. You know, Jeff had a lot of writing credits on this album. And I think if you listen to the first few High on Fire records in comparison to this one, there's a big difference. There's a big difference in scale choices, note choices, themes. Like, I mean, the song D2, I mean, I don't think you would have heard that on the first couple of records at all. There's definitely more of a kind of a Lovecraftian vibe on this album, even though that's all over those early records. But there's definitely more of a kind of uneasy feeling to this record that I've grasped.
Having Jeff join the band was a clutch decision.
Oh my
because
God.
he's been in the band the whole time at like to this point since joining. So
that was what, almost
2006?
15, 16, 17 years ago at
18,
this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's been with the group almost 20 years. You know, Dez was the original drummer. They lost Dez in 2018. So, I mean, these are all long tenured guys. This band hasn't had a ton of member swaps since then.
Right.
But with this record, absolutely. I don't think you could have had this record without Jeff's input. You would have had some of the tracks, I believe, but without his input, it wouldn't have had the same vibe, same flow. It didn't change the overall themes of the record. Matt Pike knows what Matt Pike knows, and he knows what he wants. And I was actually waiting for you to kind of dig into his lyrical concepts for this record. I really wanted to know what you thought about this, because like I've known about it for quite some time, but I've also known that he likes wizards and warlords and Conan the Barbarian and Lovecraft writings. But David Icke.
Yeah. I didn't personally know anything about David Icke until doing research for this album. I also didn't know a single goddamn lyric on this album. It's just Matt Pike yelling garbled noise as far as I was concerned. But it's wacky. The lyrical concepts are wacky. And there is a definite reason that those lyrical concepts are wacky.
He's had no second guessing of ever talking about what he wants to talk about and what he's into and what he believes in. Hey, that's his choice. Matt likes conspiracy theories, and he will absolutely admit it. There's I think it's a Loudwire video of him talking about cryptids. That's just outstanding. It's literally outstanding. And that's not a slight. I think it's great. You know, do I know if that stuff exists? Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? I will say this, David Icke and the Lizard People. I just think David saw the 1990s Super Mario Brothers movie and saw the Koopas in there and was just like, fuck them. Fuck those things.
I can't stand them.
Can't stand them. Fuck those ball-headed sumbitches. And that's what he went for. And doing some research on kind of David Icke in preparation for this episode, there's a record that I'm a fan of that came out a year after this by the death metal band The Faceless called Planetary Duality. I had no idea that they were influenced by David Icke on that album. And then I started to recall like, oh yeah, I had a faceless shirt with like a reptile creature on it. I went, fucking hell. How did I like, how did these things not like, because why would we know that stuff at 17, 18 years old? We weren't worried about that.
In 2009, believe it or not, there wasn't a major political party in America that believed that shit out loud. Like,
no. Yep. Conspiracy theories, David Icke, H.P. Lovecraft, probably a lot of hallucinogenic fueled trips for the lyrics. But man, you hit it. You said it best. I don't know what the hell he says half the time. That's the great thing about extreme music is when you go and you look at the lyrics, you're like, oh, this is wild shit. But then you can also go, I don't really need to hear it. I just know that what he's doing sounds like it fits the music, and there's certain vocal breaks that make sense to me. Like the melody in Turk is one of the coolest things. That's like a Celtic Frost song with like melodic vocals, and I think it's so cool. Death is His Communion. You have that part. You've got Rumors of War, which has that great vocal break, dead center of the song, right before the solo kicks in. We all know what that said. Rest of it, who knows? I didn't know the opening line of that song had something to do with reptile warriors.
Of course.
Makes me think of like when you're fighting the Lizfos in Ocarina of Time. Like you're going up Ganondorf's castle and just bop, they're there. Just those lizard monsters, they're fucking there. Matt Pike comes out wielding this fucking guitar neck with both hands and just lays waste. Shirtless, by the way. Just lays waste.
So Matt Pike is Link in this?
Yes, he absolutely is. He is Link in this narrative. He for sure is.
I think Matt Pike is more like those the people that live in the volcano.
The Gorons? Yeah. I knew exactly where you're going with that. I knew exactly where you were going.
Before I even knew, you knew.
Yep. I was like, all right, yeah, this is an easy one. But Mines. Jokes aside, lyrics aside, let's dig into this fucking record, man.
Let's do it. Track 1, Fury Whip.
The story behind that is hilarious.
We'll go ahead.
I don't know if it's true or not. I love the banter between the two guys, but apparently there was a hard night of partying. They got into the van, had to get gas. Had to get gas, and Jeff whipped out the credit card with a Fury, and that's where it came from.
That's it. That's it. And that's all.
The main riff of the song was apparently influenced by the Swedish band The Haunted that Matt was into at the time. And The Haunted is a really cool band formed out of the ashes of At the Gates, but a really like thrashy band, really fast shit. But this kind of sets the pace of the whole record. Kicks right into it with these great kind of triplet and these dissonant parts. There is an arpeggiated part at the beginning of this song that comes after that main riff that is like 8 to 16 bars long, and it doesn't sound like he's playing the same note, but it's a riff. It's not just like a lead lick. It's like, how are you doing this? And he explains it, and you're like, he knows what he's doing. Like, it's not just like meandering notes. Like, he knows for sure what he's doing.
One thing that caught me off guard, I definitely didn't know until I was doing research, was sometime in between Sleep's end and High on Fire's beginning, Matt went to a community college and took jazz improv class, and he took music theory class.
With this type of music, why would you, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
It's a very guttural form of music, and he somehow went to a point of, all right, my band Sleep is done. I got to do something with my time other than just like smoking hash. I got to do something. So like, why not? I'll go back to school. I mean, he was probably in his mid to late 20s by the time Sleep broke up. Why not? He went back, learned some theory, learned some fucking jazz. Like,
right.
So yeah, he gets to incorporate. Now he's got like he has a knowledge of why he plays all of the weird shit that he plays. Because let's face it, you know, we toyed around with it a little bit, but he's got a guitar styling all his own. Yes, all of his influencers are there. You hear it. But the minute you put anything he's involved with on, you know it's him playing. He's got a certain way that he plays and a certain way that he attacks the guitar. Because he's not taking it light on it. He is bending those strings hard.
Yeah.
And this song is a perfect example of that. Just kicking in with these thunderous riffs, these just gnarly like lead lines all throughout it. And like this song is pretty straightforward. It's nothing like out of this world, but I don't want that with High on Fire all the time. Sometimes I want the spacey stuff, but I'll say this record's got a lot of just straightforward like moshers in it. I mean, this song's even got gang vocals at the end of it. But that opening line, the da 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 da, just kicks right the fuck in.
I don't know exactly what chords he's playing at the beginning part, but there's definitely some like nines or like minor fifths.
You're getting there. It's a minor. Austin's going to be crapping his pants over this. So it's not a root 5, but it's going 1/2 step higher in key from that root 5. There you go. So it's a lot of those like those chords. And if you go from the root 5 to a higher augmented chord like that, it makes it sound darker. Whereas if you go from the root 5 and you take the lower note and augment it down, it's more of a major transition, right? So he's building that tension, and that's it. That's 100% what those chords are. And on top of that, the thick guitars on this album, they're tuned to C, straight up. You've got a bass player that's distorted, and you've got a drummer that hits fucking hard.
Yeah.
Like this sounds like a boulder just going downhill and just mowing through some tiny town in Arkansas. Like it is perfect. And I mean, the entire song is literally dealt that way. Like it doesn't let up. The parts are all meant to be there. He likes repeating parts. He doesn't necessarily like to play just insert parts for the sake of inserting parts. That's very evident with Sleep. But he is very prone to always loop back to that part for the hook. He's got a great knowledge of like classic rock and punk rock and all sorts of stuff, in which we'll talk a little bit more about punk rock with some of the other tracks on this album. But what a fucking opening track to a record.
I agree. After Fury Whip, we have Waste of Tiamat. I think is how
Tiamat,
that's pronounced.
Yep. You got it.
I'm not at the beginning of this song. There might be 2 songs with flute. There definitely is another instrument. I don't know if it's just acoustic guitar or lute, but this is one of those songs that has a kind of slower start, and then but it gets into the track pretty hard.
The fucking fill that kicks in the hard part of the song.
Yeah.
That's some Bron Daler shit.
I'm not actually, speaking of drums on this song, I'm not really sure what the fucking snare is doing. Like, I can't tell if the song is in 12/8 or if that song is in 3 and he's playing a weird 6-tuplet polyrhythm. But the snare, like, I swear the snare is hitting. If he's playing a 6-tuplet, it would be hitting the 1 and the 4 of the 6-tuplet. But he's not playing a 6-tuplet anywhere else. It's just a pop, 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 pop throughout like the whole song. I don't know how he's doing that shit.
Dez, I've always liked Dez's drumming and I'm not like, I don't follow drums on records a lot. And the way this album's produced, because the guitars are so fucking dense, he's kind of buried in the mix a little bit. It's hard to hear him on some tracks, which is a disservice to him. Obviously, there's plenty of albums you can hear him on and go like, oh, fucking yes. But man, he is all over this record. He's like this on this record. I mean, Matt mentioned it in an interview where they were talking about, I think it was it was either the track Blood from Zion, Baghdad, or 10,000 Years, that it's in this kind of weird time. And he's like, yeah, I had to put it to a metronome and I just had to fucking make it fit. And he goes, but I played it with Dez and Dez got it immediately and was like, oh yeah, here we go. So Dez probably has some music education in there that maybe we don't know about and maybe we haven't found. Because he's definitely doing some interesting shit. Like, you know, you hear about other drummers doing different things. It's like, hey, go back and listen to those old High on Fire records. He's hitting hard. And maybe that's just from playing with Matt for so long. He's like, Matt's kind of got this odd feel of how he plays and a lot of sliding notes and everything. So he's just like, I'm used to it, you know? Yeah. Now I get to throw some weird shit at Matt and make him think a little bit. But this is a really good track. I do like the returning motif of Matt always singing Tiamat and ending kind of the punctuated parts with Tiamat on there. Again, I've got, you know what? I forgot completely about. I have the book that Matt put out about 2 years ago that goes into some of his lyrics. And I didn't even look at it. Like, it's fucking autographed. Like, I got it. What? It opens up the lyrics to Rumors of War and it's just Ooga. That's all it says.
Who published that? Who published that book?
I don't know. But I've got it. I really should take a look at that. But Tiamat, I believe, is a character. I believe Tiamat is a Lovecraftian character.
I think maybe it's a return. It's also a reoccurring character in High on Fire lore. I think maybe there was a Tiamat song in like Blessed Black Wings or something. Mm-hmm. They talked about it in one of the interviews that I read. Again, I wouldn't know. I don't ever listen to the lyrics of this band. But I was just thinking, I hope this book about Matt Pike's lyrics is biblical in the future. Like, there's a King James version of Matt Pike lyrics, and there's like the New Standard version of Matt Pike lyrics.
the thousand-eyed angels raining hellfire. What is it? The seven-headed dragon.
Yeah. Just for some reason, there's all the like this. When humanity dies out, when like governments fall, the only book that stands the test of time is the book of Matt Pike lyrics.
I just want to see, I'll never see it, but I can picture some sort of being holding like Catcher in the Rye and holding Matt Pike's lyric book, as they should. And they toss that piece of shit Catcher in the Rye over their shoulder, yeah. And they're like, This is it. This is canon. This is what we're doing. Matt knew about the Sumerians. We're back. We're fucking shit up. I don't know what the fuck Caulfield was talking about. Get that shit away from me.
Right. Between the two, I would also go with Matt Pike's lyrics, personally.
It's being said now. Matt Pike's lyric book that he put out, which I do enjoy, and this is not a joke, is better than Catcher in the Rye, and I hope he hears that and just gets a giggle. Just a chuckle. But back to the record. We go on to the title track, Death is This Communion, which is a long track.
Yep.
But has long riffs in it, too. This was a collaborative track, but this is also a track that Jeff wrote the majority of. He and Matt wrote a lot of this track together, and Matt himself has actually said that you can tell these are Jeff Matz riffs all through this, just the way they sound, the way they feel, the way the notes are bent a half step or anything like that. It is, as Matt said it's one of those songs that just kind of wrote itself. A Fall from the Sky riff, or a Fall from the Sky song. A really long track. I was listening to it one more time before we recorded, and it hits the point home. I do maybe wish there was maybe one less part in it, maybe one less verse or anything. But I do, again, he's using choruses. I like that a lot. It's memorable. You're going to remember him singing Death is His Communion. And I believe this is the track that also has some weird vocal effects. And I think this is the track where he runs his voice through the Marshall amp.
Yeah. I wasn't sure. We watched those videos and he was just like, we're running my vocals through a Marshall amp. That's pretty cool. But he, I didn't know if that was like the whole fucking album or if it was just like a song, a couple of songs, whatever.
I had to actually go back and kind of listen and play through the tracks a little bit to find it. But the clip that they were recording was definitely this track. But you may be right. He may have a layer of vocal isolated tracks that are just that Marshall amp going through under the 9-string guitars, which you're hearing, which is wild shit.
One thing I like about this track, and this is just a good thing to do in music so you don't step on each other, is this is a very bass-driven track, like you said.
100%.
And during the verses, the guitar is doing almost nothing.
Mm-hmm. He was just vibing.
Right. It's good. It's good when one of the people of the band, and it doesn't matter who, if it's a very guitar-heavy riff, then the bass could probably just take a step back and chill for a riff, to not muddy up what people are hearing, to not just be making noise while someone else is making noise. And the same when the bass is going heavy, the guitar can just fall back and chill. And like, if it's I'm a drummer, but I don't know what the drums will be doing that everybody else could fall back.
It says a lot for somebody that has the legacy that Matt does, that he can recognize a point in a song to go, that's too good for me to like just add shit to it. It's good already. I'll just, vamp and feel out where I need to play, and then I'll come in. It shows that the ego, there's probably ego there, but that's fine. We all have ego to an extent, but he's just comfortable enough with his to go, okay, this is a good track. I'm not stepping on this. I know what I'm doing.
I also like, it's very Tony Iommi in War Pigs.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Sections like right before the chorus where the verse is technically ended, and it's like a little pre-chorus where he just adds a little hammer-on pull-off ditty. Those are really cool. I like those.
Those are very cool. It also shows how I feel it shows him giving so much respect to Jeff and his input, that he's like, you wrote it, man. This is good.
Yeah.
Keep playing. We're going to do this. We're going to do this again. And again, maybe that's why this track is so much longer than some of the other ones, is it does feel like a jam, right? It feels like they just found two really solid riffs and they're like, we're going to beat the hell out of it. We're just going to keep going and just play those riffs till we nail them in the ground. And then you get the next track, which is the first segue track. I believe this is the track that's got the different instrumentation on it, the 12-string, the lute. I think there might be some baglama on this record as well. I'm not entirely sure. But I like the breakup of how the album is, especially after a really long track like that. But you get an instrumental piece, and then you kick right into what is my favorite song on the record is Turk. It opens up with that. It's a longer intro, but it builds to that fucking riff. That is just that chromatic, just gnarly fucking riff. And it sounds like, the minute I heard it and then I heard the kind of pre-chorus, I was like, this is Celtic Frost. This is Tom G. Warrior. This is awesome. And I've ripped off that main riff in a band that Austin and I were in together, and I ripped it off poorly. But it's there. It's there nonetheless.
The opening riff of the song at the very beginning, before the verses,
those drums.
The riff isn't one of those instances you were talking about earlier where Pike does slides in his riffs a lot. He slides down and up into those notes a lot in the opening riff of this song.
Pike's got that thing he does that's kind of his signature where he beats the hell out of the 12th fret on the E string, where it's like those octave chords and he'll just like drone it on. And he plays around with that 12th fret a lot. And this is, to me, by ear, this is pretty evident in this song as well as a couple of the next tracks we'll talk about. But man, I love the chorus in this song. It's probably the most melodic chorus in the whole album. Like it might be. There's some great live footage from this era of the band, and they're playing at Amoeba Records. And it's this Blue Room. And I've seen that footage for 15 years. And they play Turk, and it just like, it decimates that little record store. And it's so cool. They wrote a banger. Like this is a metal classic to me. This is like, this could go up with like Painkiller or Battery or something off of Oddfellows Rest. Like, this is one of those like bangers that you could put on and go, this is a representation of what sludge or doom metal or like stoner metal should sound like.
One note that I took for this song is the guitar during the verse is so fast that it makes the drums seem like they're playing halftime, but they're not. They're playing like eighth note hi-hat on the 2 and 4 of the snare, just playing normal time, but the guitar is so fast. And an interesting thing is in the chorus, when the drums go double time, the guitar is just playing full notes, just ringing chords. It's such a weird speed dynamic there.
That pre-chorus of that track, that da na 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 na, those slide riffs, which, you know, thanks Tom G for influencing Matt on that, and it kicks right into that chorus, as you said, where he's just letting Dez go off, and he's like, "I'll play 4 chords. I'm cool with this," because the lyrics there matter. Those lyrics are a fucking hook, and they're cleanly sung. His voice sounds the way it does, but they're very clean and precise. I mean, that is, and the track ends like that. It's just like, it ends with him screaming, Father Time, and then it's over. Great track. Man, what a good track. But the sequencing of the record's a little off to me, and I think this is part of what you were talking about. You're met with another kind of segue instrumental, but at least it's Dez just kind of getting his moment in the sun.
I actually was going to ask you, because we were talking about, as you mentioned, we were talking about the sequencing of this album. You said you kind of thought of Rumors of War and D2 as one long track. Would you actually consider this an intro to Rumors of War and an intro? Is it like these 3 songs are really one long track?
You know what? After hearing this today, I thought that exact thing. This could be almost like a phase into that, because the way Rumors of War starts, it does just start immediately, but it does kind of sound like there's a slight kind of tick into it. Whereas D2 sounds like the track's doing this kind of into a cone.
Yeah.
And D2 is like this very melodic thing. So we could almost talk about all 3 of these tracks as one. You've got this great kind of elaborate, drum fill from Dez. It sounds like the drums maybe even have a slight, there's some sort of like mic effect on it to make it sound like it's a little further away.
It's also multiple drum tracks. It's not just like a solo or, whatever. That's some Neurosis shit for sure. Yeah.
That is like all the toms built up and everything adding to it. And then the hit. The hit portion, Rumors of War, 2, almost 3 minutes. Like, it's the most punk rock thing they could do on this record. And that goes with it. I mentioned punk rock earlier. They've done a Bad Brains cover years later. But Turk and this track are like punk rock tracks almost. Turk, a little bit more so in the thrash realm, but this sounds like Motorhead. This is the closest thing that would make anybody think this band sounds like Motorhead. I mean, the video, I believe it's a Dave Brodsky video. It is definitely in your face. We've heard all the jokes about, does Matt Pike own a shirt? Does he not own a shirt? I've seen him in a wife beater. Like, does he own a shirt? And in this video, it's very evident that the man wastes no time when it comes to rocking. The shirt comes off, shit's going down, and the band is firing on all cylinders. You see those Soldano and those Laney like amplifiers in the background. You got a Sun bass head back there and an old Ampeg bass head. Matt's playing that first act 9-string guitar. And they're having a day. They're just tracking this rad song in some little like shed somewhere and just riffing.
It starts with like the guitar is just doing 16th notes, I think, and that's basically like the whole song.
Yep.
He kind of keeps the same rhythm for the whole song, and it starts with drums are doing a 16th note tom fill, and then but when he kicks in with like hi-hat and cymbals, he's still going 16th notes with the bass drum the whole fucking song. So it just keeps rolling at a steady, very fast pace, and it's a quick one.
It's this one doesn't let up. This track doesn't let up, and it's here and gone before you knew it. But it segues into the D2 portion, which is I think a really cool track. It's one of the coolest things I think the band's written. It's just got these great. It's the chord progression in it. There's a video of Matt playing that chord progression years later, and it's him playing around with different minor chords and different scale patterns, and that's now remembering and recalling that he did go to school for like music theory and jazz. You can hear it in this song and how it's paced, and this track has like the only guest spot on the whole record, and it's Jeff's dad playing mellotron, which adds this cool like weary effect to it. This song makes me think of like being on a ship at sea kind of thing. And just kind of looking off out in the distance and you just see waves. It just makes me think about that. But you're right. You hit the nail on the head. You could basically combine all three of those tracks and it forms like a 6-7 minute track, and it's there.
I messaged you about it earlier in the week, but there's like in the riff, there's a walk down, like a power chord walk down of at the end of the riff. And in the recording, you can hear this
those
like
trills,
the guitar trill on the way down.
Oh my God.
And I was like, I didn't think anything about it when I was listening to it. But then when I watched the behind the scenes video, he's doing that trill as he's walking down. It's all one take. He doesn't do an overdub of that. I was just like, how did he do that? Like so fluidly in a recording.
That's a lot of Black Sabbath worship, man. That is a lot of Tony Iommi, like, and Jimi Hendrix shit. It's like, all right, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do it well. But you know what? Now thinking about it, I know Matt kind of grew up in the MTV era. So like he saw a lot of those Yngwie Malmsteen videos and shit. And I've seen him rip out some Yngwie Malmsteen stuff in videos before. So like that, like harmonic minor shit's there. That like kind of really fast shit. I bet he could pull it out. Yeah, he's playing these like big heavy Les Pauls, but he could do it. I know he can.
As you said, the end of the song features Mellophone? What is the name of the instrument? Mellotron. That
Megatron's brother.
that Mellotron just makes it seem like a JRPG coming out of that song.
What's also really cool about this track is there's a guitar line in there that's mixed with the Mellotron, and they complement each other so well. The tone that he's getting out of that, and at this point, Matt's guitar tone was pretty straightforward. It was like I think he was plugging into a tuner, maybe a delay, into just that Laney head or Soldano head, whichever one he was using. Just the gain cranked. Just like there's a rig rundown years later that they did, and it shows his like setup on the Soldano and the gains on like 9. It's loud.
So after D2, we got Cyclopean Space, which I told you a couple times. It's a 12-string acoustic intro. It reminds me of Joseph Merrick, the
Leviathan track.
The last song on Leviathan. It may just because that song is also on a 12-string acoustic, but also the vibe is very similar.
it definitely made me, and like seeing the title and all that, it definitely makes me think of like big, like just big gnarly monsters, you know, doing what they do best, you know, scavenging the land, you know, eating people, the whole nine. And Matt does a really good job of evoking that, like those guttural emotions in a track like this. And again, when it comes to longer albums like this, because this album's an hour long, you know, give or take, sometimes tracks get lost in the mix of it. And the first 7 tracks of this album are so like out the gate, just all there and all like right in your face, that sometimes the back half of the album will get a little, you know, lost. And this is one of those tracks that after listening back to it, it was like, oh, that track's on here. Like I remember some of those parts. It's like these guys put out a lot of music and the songs they're decently long.
Yeah.
You know, they're shorter tracks aside from like Rumors of War are in that 5 to 6 minute range. But it's no shortage of the fact that the song's good. The song is good. You know, I wish I, you know, had a little bit more to say about it other than the song's just really good. And it's got that great arpeggiated 12-string acoustic at the front of it.
There's only really one other thing that I took note of in the song. I thought it was a really nice touch. And I only caught it like the last time I listened to the song is after the guitar solo, he kicks in a wah, but he doesn't. He just like leaves it.
He half cocks it.
Yeah. And you could tell like the whole riff after the solo that it's just sitting there. Yeah. It's still engaged. It's still on, but it's just sitting in one spot.
That's that Michael Schenker thing from the Scorpions. Like he kind of half cocks it and it gives us this really kind of throaty kind of sound. And that's a cool sound. That is a very, very just interesting sound that can get used. I can't remember his name, but St. Vitus uses that a lot in some of their early recordings. Wino? It almost takes all the high. No. Wino didn't do it. Their guitar player did.
Got you. God,
I can't, Dave something. But basically it like cuts all the high end. It's like a high pass and it cuts it. So it's really, it just, the tone knobs shut off basically. And you get this great warm, like kind of gurgly sound coming out of the guitar when you do that. So, and Matt doesn't use at this period of time a lot of wah and a lot of effects. So him using an effect is kind of cool to hear.
Yeah. So coming up after Cyclopean Scape is Ethereal. And you brought up Crowbar earlier. The very beginning of this song has some guitar harmonizing that reminds me a lot of Oddfellows Rest.
Yes, I could those minor harmonies. Again, one guitar band. Hard to hear that. However, he's like, I got a 9-string guitar. I can do them all on my own. I can make all of these sounds with just me. And I'm going to continue to do that. And it's kind of a bummer to know that he kind of got away from those 9 strings a couple years later. I don't know maybe what caused that. Maybe it was just ease of use with 6 strings and stuff like that, maybe adding a pedal. And from what I gathered, those guitars are fucking heavy. Those first act 9 strings, like he has one or had one. Let's see. Bill from Mastodon has one. Brent from Mastodon had one. I think maybe one of the guys in Baroness might have had one for a little while. There weren't a ton of them made. And there's a great YouTube channel I follow, an IG page I follow called Does It Doom, and that dude has collected a few of those guitars and bought stuff from Matt and like got a couple of the Baroness customs from First Act. So he probably knows more than I do about those guitars, and that would be cool to like if he's got some wisdom on that.
Yeah, it's also a big guitar. It doesn't look
huge.
Small.
No, it's like those Gibson hollow bodies, like the 335 or like the Casino or the Santana guitars, like that kind of thing.
I was gonna say Ethereal. Sometimes on this album, I couldn't discern the bass that well. But Ethereal was the song other than Death Is This Communion that I best heard the bass.
Again, I think production-wise, I like Jack's production, but I think it's very, very guitar mid up front in this. And I don't know how many layers of guitars Matt tracked, but of course, Jeff is using a distorted bass as well,
Right,
which doesn't
cuts.
help with that. Yeah,
Right.
Which cuts in certain aspects, but also kind of, blends in a little too well. Whereas the album after this, Stakes for the Divine, you can hear him a lot more because he's using a different tonality with the distortion. But maybe that's a lesson. Like that happens. You want it to sound like a boulder coming downhill, and this record definitely does.
Yeah, well, when I said it cuts, what I actually meant was like it cuts the low end, right? A lot of times. Yeah.
I knew exactly what you meant because it does. Like certain pedals, it just eats the low end up right there. And being a bass tuned to C, with these layered guitars, these loud, like almost dimed out, gain knobs on these amps, and how hard he's playing and how loud he's playing, like you're going to get buried a little bit. But again, I noticed that too. There's only a handful of tracks that you really hear Jeff on. That's why his presence is more felt in like the writing and the instrumentation, I think. Cool track. I really enjoyed it a lot. The kind of back half of this record's kind of lost on me and it bums me out. But it gives me more of a chance to spend more time with the back half of that record.
After a short jam at the end of Ethereal, we have the return to the Nation of Domination, NOD.
Had to get the wrestling reference in there.
Yep.
Had to get. We're done. We can end the episode now. Like I don't want to mess with the Nation. I know what he did to. I know what Dwayne did to Cody recently. I don't want to fuck around with that.
We have Danhausen on our side. He's now a member.
That's right. He's now. Man.
I thought this was a good end to the album. The only note that I really took on this song was that the bridge, I really like the riff of the bridge before like the guitar solo. I love that riff.
That is the one thing I remember from this track.
Yeah.
That is the one thing that really sticks out. Not to say the track's bad or anything, but that's the thing that really sticks out, because maybe it's just, and you and I think have very similar effects to this. Like after like so much like intense, aggressive music right in the face, like for an hour, you're like, you kind of get riff weary a little bit.
Yeah.
And you kind of dial it back a bit. But with albums like this, you kind of have the split in two. Like you go, all right, here's 30 minutes, here's 30 minutes. Got it. And that's why, like, to me, sometimes that 45-minute range is a good cap. But I know with a band like this, the albums are going to be an hour long. They just are. And again, you got 8 to 9 good songs that you're really proud of and have great riffs and great hooks and all of that. And then you get, you want to put it out. You want people to hear it. And luckily, on this last track, you got that bridge part that stuck out to us. So I'm sure it stuck out to other people too.
Overall, I think it's a really good album.
Yep, I agree.
Like we said, for me, maybe the album could have flowed a bit, not better, but like
had a little bit different sequencing to it.
Yeah, possibly, but the riffs are there.
Oh my God.
Definitely. Always with Matt Pike, the riffs are there. I think the songwriting, this point, this may have been like the best songwriting Matt Pike had been doing. Like cohesive, songy songs. I think it's a really solid album.
I do too. I don't want to forget to talk about a big important factor of this album is the artwork. Eric Roper, a great piece of art by him for the cover. He also did the albums The Art of Self-Defense, Bless Black Wings, Snakes for Divine, and the newest record that's coming out, Cometh the Storm. Again, just an iconic piece. You know, he's got some great information about what the band's normal routine with him was, which they basically would go, we need art. All right, cool. Can I hear the music? We're not done with it yet. Here's Matt's lyrics. Like, have at it. And, you know, his approach to it hits the album head on. It's a very green album. It's a very green sounding record. And what I didn't know was that they used another artist for some of the other artwork on the album. And I do not want to butcher this gentleman's name, but I believe it is Orion Landau, I think, or Orion.
Yeah.
Landau. And he did the Surrounded by Thieves album initially, but he's also done work with Agoraphobic, Nosebleed. He did some Mastodon stuff, and he's done stuff with I didn't know this, Necrophagist, which is another Relapse. All those are Relapse artists at this point. But the artwork has always added a vibe to these albums. Like these are bands you want really, or this is a band you want really cool artwork with. And the new record looks amazing. That boat in the sky makes me think of Hook immediately. But I love it. I like the return to form with that artwork. Electric Messiah was not my favorite art style, which Skinner's a great artist, don't get me wrong, but I just didn't enjoy that cover as much. But I do really, really like this kind of marriage of the band getting Eric back in there and using him again, because they were married for so long with all of the artwork they have. I think my favorite High on Fire album cover is the Snakes for Divine cover, though. Just the kind of Medusa-esque character, dead center of it. But Eric's done stuff with Bongzilla. I think he did the Marijuanacan record. I just wanted to get that word in there so bad. He did Weed Eater, like most of their stuff. Jason the Dragon. He's done stuff with Earth, Windhand. Like, the guy loves heavy shit and wants to make it look even heavier.
Eric did a cover of Dope Smoker, and he did a cover of Jerusalem, but I don't know if the Dope Smoker cover is like the one with the camels that everyone knows, or if it's like a different one.
It is. I can see it in my head. It's a guy riding a horse, and it's very like mystical looking. If you see it, like, it's very black and white. Hopefully Austin can find that and throw that in there. But yeah, I agree. It's a overall fantastic record. I think it's a transition record for the band. They've solidified their lineup. The writing became much more cohesive. And then you've got kind of a beginning of a new era for the band, at least for, another 10 or so years, with Dez, Matt, and Jeff in the band. The band are road dogs. They may tour a little bit less today than they did back in this era, but they did a lot of touring for this record. May have been spread out, but they did a shitload.
I was one of the tours that was very interesting to me because of the timing only, kinda, was this album came out on September 10th of 2007. They went on tour in July. They went on
before the record,
a 10-day tour. I guess I don't know when exactly the recording of this album was, but it seems like that would be a very important time for this band to be working on this record at some point. And I was just surprised that they were on tour 3 months before it came out.
I would bank that this record was probably in the can for a while.
Yeah.
And that gave them, I'm sure most of the stuff that was being done behind the scenes to finish the record up was still being done at that point. But they were like, we got to go on tour. We got to start promoting this thing.
They were like, we don't want to go find a part-time job. We got to go back on tour.
Well, I mean, probably some of that they had already taken time off. And a lot of bands have, and I've heard stories from different bands, and maybe this isn't the case for them, or it could be. where they'll get phone calls and they're like, hey, the album's mastered. When are you guys swinging through Seattle? Well, we'll be there in a week. Okay, I'll see you guys in a week. Let's get together over the master. And then they start another tour after that or something. This band was probably still really punk rock when it came to touring, even though they had Relapse behind them.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, they've got label backing, but I mean, they're still touring in probably a conversion van or something by this point.
Yeah, there's no telling where they woke up. But so they went on that tour in July. I was actually kind of wrong. So this the album had 2 release dates. It actually it was released in Europe first on September 10th. They were on tour then. That was their September 10th was their next to last date in Europe. They were in Berlin the day that this album dropped on September 10th. Then shortly after, just 10 days later, they started a 5-week-long tour of North America with Coliseum from Louisville's own, Mono, and Panthers, starting on September 20th and ending somewhere in the middle of, like, at the end of October, I think.
That night in Berlin, how hammered do you think everybody was?
Oh yeah, who the fuck knows? I'm surprised they weren't in it. They weren't like, let's be in Amsterdam when this album drops. Like,
jeez. Even they were just like, okay, that's
a little on the nose.
We're pushing it. we're pushing it, guys. Like, Berlin's fine.
Yeah.
German beer.
So yeah, the album dropped in America on September 18th, and that's on September 20th. They started that 5-week tour. In December, they went back to the UK with Pelican for 8 or 9 day tour. In January of 2008, they started another 5-week tour of North American dates with A Life Once Lost and Saviors, Wake, and Intronaut. That tour was sponsored by Metal Maniacs, Lamb Goat, Suicide Girls, and SickDrummer.com.
Listen to those. I think SickDrummer.com is still around. Lamb Goat is obviously still there. I don't think Metal Maniacs has been gone for a while. That's a magazine, and I don't think Suicide Girls exists anymore, at least in the forefront that it did at this point. But what a wild tour for them to sponsor, right? And I'm sure Pike's like, to put me on tour.
Well, I'm sure Pike had no problem being sponsored by Suicide Girls.
I'm waiting for the blurb. This it's funny. We say the band toured a lot, but if you really look at it, they didn't tour a ton. They did that 5-week tour, and then there was a bit of a break, right? The album came out the tail end of the year, or the back portion of the year, and then you had the holidays, and then they did that big tour in 2008 that had, Opeth obviously headlining, Baroness. This would have been right before the Blue record, I believe. And then you had the Chicago band, Not Mystium, on this tour as well. That was a weird one. I remember seeing the flyers for that when I was a kid and really hoping it would come near me, and it clearly didn't.
Right.
Yeah. Clearly.
Arkansas.
Well, I don't blame anybody for not touring through Arkansas at that point. Like, it was, man, you get stuck there, you're done. That place is still a Wild West back then. But like, the band toured a lot, and they did what the band does most. They toured a lot, probably played some more shows, and they started huddling down and writing the next record. You've got all these records by this band. You've got the records that came before this album. We've talked a little bit about it, but you got a new record coming out. It's 2024. High on Fire still putting out great shit. The track released for the newest album, Cometh the Storm, it's called Burning Down. And what we got in it was a really great, just monotonous, just beat down of a riff in it. And it's like, it's High on Fire. They're back. It's been 6 years since Electric Messiah, their Grammy Award winning album at that. You got a new one. It's inevitable. The album be coming out April 19th. Cometh the Storm. Again, High on Fire.
It looks like that album's put out by Monarch Heavy.
Monarch Heavy. They've been with them since Snakes for the Divine. They were E1 back then.
Oh, got you.
Yep, they've changed a little bit here and there. But Monarch Heavy has Crowbar as well.
I was trying to remember who Austin and I saw High on Fire with.
Crowbar.
Yeah, and I was like, was it Weed Eater, High on Fire, and Crowbar? I think was possibly the show.
I think that was it. Listen to yourself say that. Listen to yourself say that. I missed that for some stupid reason. I'm sure it had to do with work.
Yeah.
And I got to see Sleep, which I enjoyed just fine. But I've yet to see High on Fire and come out of there just going, huh? Huh? I need to see it. I'm hoping for some touring in our neck of the woods with this record that's coming out. I know Austin will get to see them in Chicago. Hopefully he makes the point to go see them. Check out Death Is His Communion. Check out the new record, Cometh the Storm, and go check the band out on tour.
I've listened to the single. I'll be surprised to see how the drummer compares to Dez.
Oh, that's right. This is the first record without Dez.
Right.
But I believe the drummer in this album is in that band Big Business.
Yeah.
That was part of the Melvins. So,
Right.
I mean, he's played with Del Crover, so hopefully it's some good shit.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be great. I'm sure Matt Pike had High on Fire had plenty of people, I'm sure, lined up to want to play drums with them. So they probably had a pick of the litter of drummers. So I'm sure the drums are going to be outstanding.
Let's hope, man. Let's hope it's good. It sounds good already. I wish they had dropped maybe another track.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're going to get that. I think the one is fine. I'll take it. I'll take what I can get. Looking forward to listening to it in whole, though.
We've come to that part of the episode where we recommend what we've been listening to. I'll go first. My first rec, through the magic of pre-ordering, like 3 or 4 weeks early, it comes out the same day as the High on Fire album, April 19th.
That's wild.
Big Braves, A Chaos of Flowers. This one. Been listening to it. Kind of droney music. A lot of the lyrics are poems that the vocalist loves. But I love it. I love the droniness. It's not drone in the same way that Sleep is drony. It's a different drony. Also, the vocalist's voice is just wonderful. And that's one of my favorite parts of the band.
You guys have been a fan of that band for quite some time.
Yeah.
I've heard you guys mention that band a lot throughout the years.
They were on my best of 2023, my favorite albums. Their last album was. My second recommendation is the new single Yellow Dawn by Sumac.
A 12-minute single.
Yeah. From the album The Healer, which will be out in June. The album is going to be over an hour long, I'm pretty sure. And it's only 4 songs, Dylan. 4 songs.
I mean, what a good rec on this episode.
Yep. The first time I listened to this song, it starts with kind of like a little jammy jam. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh no, what's happening? Is it 12 minutes of this? But then it gets heavy. It gets very heavy.
Oh no, what's happened?
And my third rec is a split that came out, I think March 29th. It's kind of hard to describe, but the A side of this split is a collaboration between the band Def Club, which features Justin from The Locust, and I think one of the people from ACXDC.
That's the best AC/DC cover band on the planet.
The collab is with the Hers Collective. That's the A side. That A side features a cover of Tourette's by Nirvana. The B side of this split is a band called Fuck Money. The split was released on March 29th through 31G Records. So those are my recs.
That's fitting. I was going to ask if this sounds like Tropical Fuck Storm, but we both know it doesn't. We both know it doesn't. I got two. I got Less Than Swindle this week. It's the new Umber Bataille release, Belief is Obsolete. Man, I was stoked when this supergroup came out in like the early part of the pandemic, and just Jake Bannon on anything. We had a conversation recently talking about Jake Bannon and just how like his hands are all over everything in hardcore. And then, you know, having a death metal supergroup, you know, it's him. I believe it's three of the guys from the Red Chord. It's the former guitar player of Hatebreed. Like, this is some pretty gnarly shit, and this track in particular has some heavy riffs to it. The album will be out on June 7th through Death Wish Records, and it is called Light of Death. My second recommendation is a little more traditional heavy metal, and it kind of sounds like Load Era Metallica, and people are going to think I'm fucking weird for that one. But the new track from Crypt Sermon, Heavy as the Crown of Bone, from their upcoming album, The Stygian Rose. This will be coming out through Dark Descent Records on June 14th, 2024. I kind of shrugged this band off 5 years ago when their last release came out, because I thought the vocalist sounded like Chester Bennington over doom metal. Not that it sounded bad, it just didn't do a whole lot for me. This is different. There's some odd time shit. The bass is prominent. You can actually hear him cut through the mix. This is really fucking cool. This kind of just hit me out of nowhere and went like, yep, got to get this. So those are my recs for the week. I think we should probably bring up our playlist.
Yeah. Throughout Austin's time at college, he has been, I think at different points, keeping a playlist on Spotify called Riffs on Repeat. So on Spotify, if you want to hear the new releases that we have been listening to, check out the Riffs on Repeat playlist, and we'll cycle songs in and out as stuff is released. And on Apple Music, Dylan has been curating Hits from the Crypt, and I think it's very similar. Dylan's going to be cycling songs in and out as songs get released, and it's going to be two different flavors.
The approach that was used was Austin's take on it, so this kind of puts us all back because we're older millennials, right? Austin's take was it's kind of a red and green situation, like a Japanese Pokemon thing. With that. So yeah, that way, if anybody's interested in hearing what we're all listening to, you've got two different formats. I have a feeling that you guys will have a little bit more attention paid to yours because Spotify is more globally used. But my dumbass puts one out. And if you're not already tired enough hearing my dumbass flap my fucking gums, I've got a review, The Dillbozer's Den, dropping every single Friday.
What are you've done the newest Sheer Mag album?
I did Sheer Mag. I did Gouge Away. I've done Apparition. And hopefully things go according to plan. I will be doing the new High on Fire record at some point.
Yeah. And possibly you might be doing the most recent Frail Body album.
Mm-hmm.
A shortened version of those reviews get posted to our social media accounts every week, and the full version is up on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, they're right there. And if you're not, go to YouTube and watch his reviews.
Again, thank you guys for joining Swindle and I. You know, we're bummed not to have our third knucklehead with us, Austin Paulson, but he's tending to some really important things right now. I'm surprised he let us off the leash long enough to do one of these without him, but we thank him for that. We miss him. We'll catch you guys again next week. It's me, the Dillbozer, Baldini, the schmuck from Arkansas, and the oldest man on the planet from Louisville, Kentucky himself, Justin Swindle, signing off.
Bye. We did it.
We did it. He's
think-
going to hate us.